I made a command decision last night about flying. The Nano Talon and the one Mini Talon have both had their airspeed calibrations done. It was my first ever. I'm not exactly sure of them, but they actually are done. Both of them have an auto tune on them. So technically, even though they may crash, I don't have to wait for a windless day to retune them again. I could just fly them and they may crash, but look what greeted me this morning. There's just not a breeze in the air right now. I'm sitting here waiting on my flying partner to show up about an hour from now.
And here's the scene of the crash. There were two of them. I actually tried to auto-tune the flame wheel today and it didn't work well, and actually broke an arm. That's a separate video, but we're talking about the Nano Talon crash here. So this is the sod field. This one's like 7 miles from my house. It's just really close. It takes me almost less than 5 minutes to get there. The larger field is the one I should have gone to. All these initial things that I'm having to do, the things I'm doing for the first time in life, probably should be being done at the large field. And today I did the auto takeoff again. It's my second auto takeoff ever in life. It was successful. My first one was not. I burned up motor because of a throttle perimeter being at 70% instead of 100% on my first ever attempt. Today's second attempt worked fine, but I still had the historic problem of how far away is it going to run, how high is it going to go. And with the little Nano Talon, it just, man, it's set to like, what is it, 144 meters away? What is that, a football field and a half? It's really hard for me to see at that distance. So I ended up throwing it just about exactly the direction this picture is pointed in right now. And it was like a 30-second flight. Let's go ahead and look at what I've got of it. I didn't do good videos today either, because with Walter there and some other things we were doing, it was more of a fun day, and I just wasn't being disciplined with my checklists for turning cameras on and off and stuff. I was just kind of having fun instead of being super serious about it all. Here's the video from the camera in the front of the Nano Talon. It's very short. That was fun, wasn't it? Let me see if I can narrate it this time for you. And I'm going to slow it down a little bit. So I armed it, put the throttle to high, put it in automatic takeoff mode, and right there I shook it to wake it. You should see my hand come in the left side of the screen right there as I throw it. And this time auto takeoff worked perfectly. It went flying out. It's getting smaller and smaller. Throttle's still at 100%. It kept going. Got over there, started making its turn finally. To me, it had gotten all the way to that side of the field. It got pretty darn close to that side of the field now, to tell you the truth. And then it cuts back. It's going so fast because the throttle's at 100%. Plus, I can already tell that it's higher in altitude than it should have been. So I decide to drop the throttle. I'm going to drop it about a third. I'm trying. And right there's where I think I dropped the throttle, and that made it rock out of its turn a little bit and made it dive right there. As it comes around here to the right, it dives, and that just scared the holy heck out of me that it was now losing altitude. So I flipped it. No, it's not there yet. I didn't know if it was getting in those trees, if it was below those trees. So right in here, I flipped it into manual mode, and you can tell when I go for manual mode because it goes straight upside down. And basically, I couldn't see its orientation then. Had I been in the goggles, I probably could have saved it, but not the way it was. I started to pull it under there, you can see, and I think it just stalled. I could have killed the throttle for all I know. There you go. So here is that same thing from the telemetry and mission planner, my ground station.
Heading to waypoint home, altitude is 2, ground speed is 0. Armed. Mode change to takeoff. Heading to waypoint home, altitude is 3, ground speed is 21. Mode change to manual. Heading to waypoint home, altitude is 51, ground speed is 55. Warning, no data for 10 seconds.
And I'll narrate that one. I'm going to be mostly paying attention to altitude here.
Heading to waypoint home, altitude is 2, ground speed is 0. Armed.
Okay, I've got it armed. I'm bringing the throttle up to 100%, not less than 100. You remember what happened the last time on auto launch. I'm shaking it to waking it and getting ready to throw.
Mode change to takeoff. Heading to waypoint home, altitude is 3, ground speed is 21.
Everything's cool here so far. Like I say, it just went too high, 138 feet or something like that. Instead of the 100 it was supposed to go. Right there, it dipped down. And so right in here, as it come in front of me, I said, screw it, manual.
Mode change to manual. Heading to waypoint home, altitude is 51, ground speed is 55. Warning, no data for 10 seconds.
And there it is. It's what it looked like when I brought it home. How about that? The wings didn't pop off. Foam and everything. Spar, both wings. Center section just kind of pulled right out. Broke the antenna for the telemetry in the back. Pulled the hatch lock out of it, or it stayed in the top hatch. Didn't pull the wires loose in from the GPS to the flight controller. Pretty good. So it all went back together rather easily. Just glued that back down. Glued the hatch catch that's underneath there back down. If I'd continued to wipe the Gorilla Glue, you wouldn't it didn't show on the outside, you'd hardly see that repair. Oops. Same thing on this side, the ooze from the Gorilla Glue. I was wiping it with a damp paper towel and just walked away too long and some more oozed out, or you wouldn't be able to see it. The airspeed sensor in the front was the first damage I saw. And it was mostly that the 3D printed airspeed housing looked like it had just broke right here. Then I noticed that the P-dot tube, the individual tubes were a little bent up. So I cut the tubes right here, get this piece out of the way. I can, I didn't print this one. MRO printed this one, but I could print a new airspeed sensor or P-dot tube holder. I just wanted to get a good inspection of this, and I ascertained this probably is still workable. So what I was going to do, I was going to got this loose right now. I was going to just take this and stick a hole right here in the front and stick it out of the front of this hatch right there and glue it up and put the tubes back on it and fly it like that and forget it, and the whole thing would be back. Oh, the antenna ripped off too. I had to put that back on. Just the connector on the receiver. And then I noticed that I had a little problem right here. You'll notice something's missing off the end of this wire. And what that something is the connector that goes on the airspeed sensor board. I was trying to turn it over so you can see how it ripped off the, there you go. There's the little conductors, 4 of them. It ripped right off the board. It was still connected together when I turned it over. And there's 4 little places there. I could solder up the wires. Well, I decided to go look at MRO. And I pulled up the sensors on their website, and yow! $86.96 plus shipping. Boy, I sure caused some damage, didn't I? I was hoping just to get out there for maybe at most a $30 and shipping P-dot tube, but it doesn't look like that was going to happen. Well, I've decided I'm going to try to repair that board. I'm either going to try to solder that connector back on the board enough to click to it, or I'm going to try to solder the individual wires on it. There's only 4 wires. It's an I2C port. It has voltage, ground, clock, and data. That's it. There's no big mysteries there. For $86, I can at least find out if the tube itself is damaged. If I can solder back to those 4 places, and it seems to work, and the tube seems to work, I'm just going to go with it. I won't even order the tube if I can't get those things soldered, the connector sorted back on that little board. I'll have to make a decision whether I'd hate to scrap that airplane for the want of $100. And if I can get it on there and the P-dot tube doesn't seem to work, I can get a replacement right here, or I can get a different one. I'm sure it'll still work on there. So basically the damage has all been corrected at this point. But boy, what a day it was. What a day it was. And here's the whole deal. I knew that with the takeoff parameters of 36 meters high by 144 meters out distance wasn't going to work for this field. Somebody asked me before, was my altitude too low? Well, not for the field that I fly in generally, which isn't this field. And the 36 meter altitude, which is what, 106 feet, whatever, does clear these trees right here. So over here we have a problem. And as you could see, it got close. Now, here's the thing that was a little strange for me. I've got this set at, well, okay, it's 143.39. But my airplane went out over to here. It didn't stop here. It went over to here and started circling, and that's how it got right here where you could see it sweeping by here. But the long and the short of it, on this close field to my house, these trees right here, although 100 feet might clear these trees along the river here, these trees are on a hill. You can kind of tell that by the way this cornfield is tilled anyway. And this right here is a hill too, where these trees are. So these trees are much higher than these, which I plan to stay away from these because I plan to stay away from the road in this house. This is one of the barns for one of the for the sod company, one of their barns here. So see, I kind of knew that this field wasn't suitable. That's why, I tell you the God's awful truth, the wind was blowing. I threw it with the wind. But the wind was only like 1 to 3 miles an hour there today. I should have thrown it in this direction, and I probably would have been much better if I had thrown it in this direction. Now that I look at it. Yeah, now that you screwed it up. Also, had I pulled it into stabilize mode, fly-by-wire A mode, instead of manual mode, I couldn't have pulled, the flight controller would have kept me from pulling it up enough to stall it, or banking it around enough to stall it. How I panicked on the sticks. If there were no trees where it would limit me to, I would have been fine. But here's the other field. Let me show you it real quick. And see, here's the flying field I set that up for. There's the 143.56. I can't get it exactly. I guess I could type it in there. Anyway, except for the high voltage power lines coming right down through here, meaning I'd never want to throw it in this direction. We try to fly out in front of, this is the entry road right here. We try to fly in this direction between here and the road right here in this field. And this is what it was set up for. And this again is sod fields. There's just grass in it. Actually, there's a pivot, irrigation pivot right in here. It sticks up 8 or 10 feet, made out of big round pipe. That's the highest thing in the field. The rest of those things are ditches. That's why I like flying here so much. So if I had taken it there, there's several things. Never having ever done a auto takeoff before, I was already skittish of the 144 meter distance it was going to start circling at. So today when it went out that way, I had a 4S battery in it instead of a 3S too. It was cooking. I panicked. That's all there is to it. First I thought it was too high. I thought it was too close to the trees. Then it took a dive. First of all, I could have pulled the return to launch switch. It's right at my thumb. For every platform I've ever had for 10 years, it's right there at my thumb. I always make that my return to home, return to launch. That would have saved me. And having put it in fly-by-wire A instead of manual mode would have saved me today. But when it went on that roller coaster ride, took the dive, and I panicked real early. I dumped it. I completely understand it now, especially looking at the telemetry when I got back and going through it all pretty fine-tooth comb. But you can see how if I'd have gone to my favorite flying field, although it's an extra half-hour drive for me, I wouldn't have the problem. And at my level of experience, 0, for all practical intents and purposes with drone airplanes. I got 100 hours with drone quadcopters and hexacopters and such, but none with drone airplanes. This is the field I should be at for these first time experiments. And that other one's just so close, so close. Plus this one, boy. You know, if you ever were accidentally to have a flyaway, this is a real big field. Goes right on down to more and more, just really big fields in this area. I would hope the flight controller would bring it back. Okay, so don't know what else to say about that except thanks, guys.